Welcome to Hackster Café. We usually have these sessions at 10 a.m. Pacific on Tuesdays, but we're doing a special edition for our Hackster Impact Summit this week. I'm so excited to introduce Thomas Basikolo, who is a program officer at the International Telecommunication Union. He runs recurring challenges around TinyML and 5G for good, as well as GeoAI for addressing geospatial real-world problems. I saw Thomas talk earlier this year at the TinyML Summit, and we pretty much immediately decided we needed to connect our communities because you're doing so much cool stuff. Good morning, or actually, it's not morning for either of us, but thank you for joining us, and I'm so excited to interview you.
Thanks a lot, Alex, for the invitation, and I'm very excited to be here. I think our communities can benefit from each other from the work that we are doing, which is amazing, I would say, in my perspective.
Absolutely. This is so exciting. So I would love it if you could explain for us what ITU does and describe the AI for Good program, perhaps.
So the ITU develops standards, international standards. This is one part of the ITU. Another part is on the radio communication. So, for example, the 5G spectrum, or what kind of frequencies will 6G use are developed in ITU, but also to give the orbits to satellites, so that we don't have satellites crashing on each other in the space. This is done by ITU, but also we have a development sector which help developing countries in setting up their IT infrastructure. So by having projects, capacity building, and funding, of course, to developing countries.
Cool. And you had a cool analogy between wireless technologies and, for example, JPEG standards and GIF standards for images.
Yeah, so this is one of the most, I think, collaboration that we have done, very good collaboration with other standards development organizations. So ITU, ISO, and IEC, came together to develop compression standards for images. So you have JPEG standards, but also for videos, H.264, for example, is an ITU standard. And these won Emmy Awards. So it's quite interesting to see ITU winning Emmy, which is like some kind of Hollywood awards.
Amazing. And yeah, I have been working a lot with H.264 compression while we were setting up the Impact Summit. So that's so cool. It's stuff that affects our everyday lives. I'd love to know, how did you get started on this path, and how do you continue to learn about this type of technology?
Well, my background is in computer engineering. I'm from Malawi, by the way, so it's a tiny African country. But I did my master's and PhD in Japan in computer engineering, and my major was in wireless communications. So it was kind of a natural progression to go to machine learning. And then from Japan, I transitioned to Geneva to work in ITU. And because most of my work is related to machine learning, and ITU is working with, it's like UN to work with people to sustainable development goals, it was a natural progression to have like projects or to work on projects that have impact, especially that are related to sustainable development goals. So that's how I came up to be part of the AI for Good team.
Yeah, so welcome. Speaking of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the initiatives that you launched with ITU seem to have a lot of overlap with this. I'm curious about which of those goals particularly inspire you.
So working, I would say, coming from a poor country in Africa, you see poverty all around, you see people suffering, you see maybe friends having difficulties to access education. So these are some of the goals, for example, no poverty, zero hunger, that motivated me to work on something that can be helpful to people. Because if you are doing projects, maybe AI projects to agriculture or food security or can be related to digital financial services. You know that you to touch upon people, and these are most people that are vulnerable from developing countries. So these are some of the insights that I had growing up, and to see that I can maybe contribute in one way or another.
Awesome. And could you tell us a bit about the challenges that you're running? So a big part of what you do seems to be centered around these AI for good challenges. I'd love to hear, particularly about the recent one you've just announced the semi-finalists, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, so we started the competitions in 2020. So 4 years now. We have run 4 editions. And as I already said about the history of ITU, it's a UN specialized for ICTs. So we work mostly in like 4G, 5G related areas. But since I'm also part of the AI for good, we tried to work on something that is beneficial for humanity, launch competitions that can have impact to developing countries, to developing worlds, to help some of these achieve SDGs. So we launched GeoAI competitions, but this year is quite interesting to see ITU is very focused on climate change. We have what we call the Green Digital Action Track at COP28. And as a
Yes.
part of this Green Digital Action Track, we launched a competition on AI and machine learning solutions for climate change. And this is in two parts. We are looking at startups. So startups are pitching their AI solutions that has solved some of these SDGs related to climate change. But also we launched a competition, a machine learning competition, where we give out a data set for energy efficiency of 5G systems, because we understand that in 5G systems, they also consume so much energy, and we need to reduce the amount of energy that these systems consume. And they can be of benefit in terms of mitigating climate change. So these are some of the projects that we are working on, and we are going to have the final session on 2 December at COP28 in Dubai. So if anyone is available in Dubai, please join us for this session.
Cool. And in the meantime, folks can check out the semi-finalists in this article that you posted, which when we post the recording of this, we will put the link in the description to the video. But if you follow Thomas on LinkedIn, you can find this among his recent posts. You're always posting so much interesting stuff around challenges that you're doing, webinars, workshops, that Green Digital Action Track at COP28 that you were mentioning. All of this stuff, you can find it by following you on LinkedIn. But yeah, I wanted to take a quick look at the finalists for this challenge because they're so interesting. Do you have a favorite? Well, okay, actually, I can't ask you that.
No
Or maybe I
favorites, no
can. I don't know.
favorites. Oh, everyone has cool solutions. And of course, they have also their own interesting stories, how they come up with these solutions, what kind of SDG they are solving. If you can see, they are all in different areas.
Yeah.
Poseidon is working in hydrology, water management, and fish production, which is food and agriculture as well as water, different SDGs. You have Toby and FinUp. They are using AI to estimate soil parameters and help farmers to grow crops well, and of course reduce the amount of water that they can use when growing crops. SI Analytics, they are working on early warnings, which is one of the major topics that ITU WMO are working on, but also under the United UN Secretary General. So, and then we have Bloom, which is an upcoming startup, small, but they are using FAO's what we call FMAP, which is an open source map, to come up with interesting solutions to help farmers using these digital solutions. So everyone has their own interesting and unique story, and please you can join us. I believe that we'll have also an online session that will be available for everyone to join. Yeah.
Nice, in December. So I'm really curious, when you run a challenge like this and you have the finalists, what happens to the project afterwards? I see that the last one here is a startup, and so presumably they're going to take a sort of entrepreneurial track. But for the other groups, do they publish a research paper? Do they share? Do they end up presenting these in other places, or what happens? Yeah.
Yeah. So first, I would like maybe to address the innovation factory part of it, which is startup pitching sessions. So for startups, we have judges who are venture capitalists, or maybe they have their own startups. So we provide networking opportunities, and in some cases they have VC funding, but also we help to network for their networking, to improve their solutions, to go into the larger markets. So these are some of the things that we expose to these startups. But in terms of the challenge, the machine learning competition, the story is different. So when we have the teams, I would say that we encourage them. Okay, it's not a must. We don't push them, but we encourage them to open source their solution. So we have a GitHub repositories for all these cool solutions, machine learning solutions that they have. And then everyone push their code, their reports, their presentations in these GitHub repos. So you can see them, they are freely available, and people develop on top of this. But apart from just open sourcing their solution, we also encourage them to publish in like academic journals. And the ITU has a journal for future and evolving technologies. We call it ITU JFET journal. And we have our special issue every year where we encourage the participants to submit their solution, but also they are free to submit in other journals or other international conferences. Of course, it's still new, but we are talking with other machine learning competitions to co-organize workshops with our solutions as well to expose these. I think we have amazing people with amazing solutions, so we need to expose them as much as possible.
I love
So
this. You
these are
have
some
this.
of the things that are happening, apart from prizes that we give. Yeah.
Very cool. I love that you have this huge machinery that you've developed, and by machinery I mean, you know, a system made of humans. But like this amazing structure that you've developed to bring out these solutions and then like make sure that they don't just vanish. So with workshops like you were mentioning, and scholarly journals and things like that. So cool. I'm curious, obviously you're focused on AI most of all, and specifically telecommunications through ITU, but are there specific technologies that you see participants using? So for example, there's been a lot of interest in recent years around cellular technology and LoRaWAN as like a low cost, long range data transfer protocol. I'm curious if there's specific excitement and interest you see around certain types of technologies.
So our communities are different. I would say that if you can see in all these competitions, you can see maybe 5G, 6G communication networks community, and then you see the geospatial community, and then you see the TinyML community. And in the TinyML community, you find much interest in IoT, like and maybe tiny machine learning itself, the use of LoRa, for example, as a solution to communication. We have these interesting competitions that we have been running, and this year one of the aspects was to scalability. So how can you design and develop solutions that are scalable? Not just you have one piece of maybe IoT solution, but if you want to scale it to a big area, for example, 50 pieces or 100 pieces, how can you scale that? So the issue of communication comes into consideration as well. So if we are talking in a specific community, for example, the TinyML community that we have built, then this issue about connectivity LoRaWAN is much relevant.
Awesome. So I have a question for you around some of these crop disease detection and wildlife monitoring projects, and the focus is on these contests. It reminds me a little bit of some of the work that we were highlighting last year around smart parks and wildlife monitoring in a similar vein. And your work is centered heavily around collaboration. I'm curious, this is something that we face as well when we're trying to make a real difference in the world. How do you help people collaborate and not just repeat the same things from scratch every time? Are you able to connect them with groups that are already doing this work, or do you let them kind of like independently do their own thing? Do you provide guidance at all? And how do you encourage collaboration?
So one of the things that we found out is collaboration. To make sure that the collaboration is relevant, you need to provide the correct, I would say, information and support. And what we have been doing over the years is to provide this support, mentoring, and to make sure that there's healthy competition. Because people cannot just only collaborate, they have also to compete to make sure that you push the boundaries.
Mm.
So in our case, we have, for example, what you say, these GitHub repositories, but also we reach out to like collaborators, to companies who help us with resources. For this year's competition, for example, Edge Impasse provided their platform for free. Arduino and Seed Studio provided some hardware to get started for the teams. So if people were in a team, we could provide some free hardware to them, but of course not everyone. We could manage to give everyone free hardware, but at least for some teams, they managed to receive. So this helped them to work hard to make sure that they can submit something, but also they are happy to open source, to put the other solutions out there so that someone else can develop on top of it. And a very good example is the Smart Weather Station competition we ran last year. And the winner from last year is the organizer of the competition, of the same competition this year. So that's one health collaboration there.
That's really cool. Creating this sort of feedback where the sort of alumni of the previous challenge help the new people come through it. That's awesome. I'm curious, when it comes to collaboration as well, is there anyone that whose work you really admire that you would love to collaborate with, or an organization that you've never worked with that you think would be a great fit and you'd just love to work together?
There is a lot of amazing companies, amazing people doing great job. I think you guys are doing great job, and we should hook up for some work together. And of course, there's the TinyML education network. We are working together, but not much, but would like to explore more how we can cooperate and work together. And of course, the TinyML Foundation has been helpful, but we hope we can continue the collaboration with them because they bring a lot of companies, a lot of people, networks working on the TinyML related area. So yeah, these are some of the people and companies that we would like to work with.
What is the best way for people to get in touch if they're if they represent an organization and they're interested in collaborating on something? Should they contact you directly or should they reach out through some other means?
I think just contacting me directly is the easiest one. So most of the times we are looking for collaboration that is mutual benefits, not only something that is important for ITU or for AI for good that we're working on, but we would like to find something that is mutually benefit, that our collaborator and us are happy to progress together. Yeah.
Perfect. And so you mentioned earlier that there is this global summit that's just been announced for 2024, the AI for Good Global Summit that's going to be happening in Geneva next year. Could you give us a little bit of a preview about what's going to be happening there and what people can expect?
So the upcoming year, we expect a lot of different new things. In 2023, there was more of robotics, but in 2024, the focus will change to other areas. So we are hoping to see TinyML present at the summit, AI and brain related projects being showcased, but of course, more about SDGs, people pushing the boundaries using AI and SDGs. But also, as you can recognize in the AI narrative currently, is all about regulation. How can we regulate AI, the policies? So we are also going to have an AI governance day where we talk about the governance of AI.
Ooh.
So there's kind of lots of topics that people can explore and network with people from different areas, different fields.
It's a very interesting topic because we just have well, I'm not going to interject my own opinions on it too much, but there's so much going on in the AI governance world, and I'm really interested to see what all presentations you folks have around there. So I'm going to ask another question, but anyone who's watching this, you have a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, so feel free to use that to submit any questions that you have for Thomas, and yeah, we'll keep an eye on those and see if we can bring them in. Also, I'm keeping an eye on the chat. So Thomas, you also advise the ITU-T focus group on autonomous networks. Could you explain what that is and what you're doing with them?
Well,
Sounds interesting.
this is interesting so much that I think this is one of my bread and butter.
Ooh.
So what we are trying to develop is specification or standards for a safe driving network. So consider a network that can heal itself, that can detect failures and heal them before they happen. So in this case, we are talking about a 5G or a future 6G network that you don't have so much engineers to do all this manual work, but the network can self optimize, self heal, and do all these amazing things on its own.
That's so interesting. I know this isn't the same thing, but it makes me think of mycelial networks, which are, you know, when you add mycelium to a to a physical project, it can kind of help it self-heal. And of course, it's a network as well. And I love the idea of there's being something similar for self-healing networks. I did a little bit of Arduino mesh networking stuff back in the day, and it's just such an exciting and interesting area. I'm not sure if this is the same one, but it's
yeah, it is this one. Yeah.
excellent. Yeah. You mentioned 6G, and I should know this, but could you tell us what is 6G compared to 5G exactly?
Well, I would say that the definition of 6G is not yet mature.
Uh-huh.
So I would say that if I try to say I have defined it, it will be wrong.
Right.
But there are several ideas around 6G, and one of them is AI native. So currently, when we're developing AI for, let's say, for 5G, you have a use case. For example, I want to increase speed. How can I increase speed? So you develop AI that helps you increase the speed. Or I want AI to reduce the energy. You develop an AI or a machine learning model that can reduce energy consumption of that system. But in 6G system, we want to have like AI integrated in the system. So when you are developing the system, AI is inside and you develop the system around it. So it's called AI native. So that the
Ah,
AI can do all these things on it by itself in the system, not necessarily developing on top of the system. So that's one part of 6G, but there are also other parts that people are working on.
that makes sense. Also, it makes total sense that like it is a definition, and so if it were already defined, then it would already kind of exist, right? So we have a question from anonymous attendee, my good friend anonymous attendee, who says, "What is the biggest challenge facing farmers in developing countries, and how can IoT and AI help?" Ooh.
Wow, that's a big one, but interesting one. I love this. So, in fact, today I'm participating in a conference about AI in African context, and one of the idea was about using AI for farmers and what is happening and what is wrong with it. And the biggest challenge is on the translation. When we are developing our systems, and of course, most of the systems are developed in the labs or in developed world, how can we translate this message to a local farmer in a poor country who doesn't have a smartphone? Maybe they have a feature phone, or they can only listen to the radio. So the translation of the message, the messaging, that's one challenge.
Hmm.
So as much as we want to develop our IoT, or we want to develop our machine learning or nice AI systems, but to make sure that the message that this system is producing is translated in a language that the farmer can understand and act upon it, that's a big challenge currently.
It makes sense. There's so much focus on sort of IoT dashboards. Many of the demos that we've seen over the course of this summit have been things like collecting the data, doing some kind of local data analysis and edge AI, and then sending up the conclusions to the cloud and logging it in a dashboard and stuff. But again, like you were mentioning, if someone doesn't have access to the cloud or like a dashboard in that way, then it's not going to be much help. That makes total sense. I have time for only a couple more questions. So here's a question. We've got, of course, the UN SDGs. Lots of really interesting questions happening there about like problems to solve that where everyone's working together toward common solutions. Are there any, if you could add another sustainable development goal, is there a question that you don't think is currently being explored within those 16 or 17 goals?
I would say bias,
Oh,
because it has many faces. Because for some people, when they talk about bias, you are talking about maybe data for people from developing versus developed world, male, female, and other genders, the representation ratios, and what have you. But if we look at the core of these problems, it will be, let's say, connectivity. So if you are looking at the connectivity ratios between male and female, there's a gap there.
Hmm.
From developed and developing world, there's a big gap there. So how can we reduce this gap? That's something that we need to think about, because we are always thinking about bias, but we don't think why we have this bias.
Yeah, absolutely. Solving the issues of bias in for example, when there are many fewer people of a certain type or examples of a certain type presented versus another one in AI, it's much better at distinguishing between or identifying those of a certain type. And that it's very top of mind for me as well. Ah, perfect. Let's see. Just as a quick lightning round, what music are you listening to lately? This is totally from my
Uh,
own.
Afrobeats,
What was it? Sorry?
Afrobeats,
Oh,
Afrobeats.
awesome. Any favorites?
Yes, Davido, yeah, from Nigeria.
Awesome. Do you have any pets? And if not, is there one you would like?
No, but when I was young, I was fascinated that someone had a monkey as a pet, and it was fascinating. But I've never pushed it further.
Yeah, I don't have any pets. I don't think I could handle it right now. And then finally, what do you do to de-stress? How do you keep yourself mentally healthy, especially working in a field where you're dealing with very real life problems all of the time? It's not necessarily practical to expect to be stress-free all the time, but how do you, uh, what are some habits that you have to help yourself stay healthy?
Well, each day is different. I wouldn't say that I have the uniform behavior.
Mm.
There are times that I just need to sit and meditate.
Mm.
there are times that I go out and just take a walk. And most of the times, a walk helps me quite a lot. If I want to think about something or I just want to relax my brain, my brain. I just walk. That's I think the good relaxing strategy.
Nice. That is why I ask about the music thing as well, because that's a big one for me. Is just like, whether it's like freaking out, like going full rah for a minute, or just like chill waves and like close my eyes and stuff. Yeah. Oh, let's see. We have a few more minutes. So, is there a favorite project that you have, not from a current challenge, because we can't do that, but from a previous challenge, especially one that's sort of been taken further into the world, getting to see something that you've worked on or that you've promoted, go out and make a difference in the world? Do you have a favorite? Favorite is hard.
Well,
How about like one that you like?
No, I think there's one thing that I like. I would like to pursue more.
Mm.
We were doing like some competition and had a component of calculating carbon that your model is producing. And I would like to maybe go further with that a little bit more, because it can help us to understand how these gigantic models, the ARMs, how much carbon they are producing when you're training them, and on inference, if you can have these kind of metrics.
Yes, that's definitely something we've been hearing about with training especially the large language models, but other types of models as well, especially if you're working on a model to help reduce the usage of carbon, and then like in training and producing and using the model, you're consuming carbon. Absolutely a bit of a conflict there. Oh, we have another Q&A. Oh, interesting. Relatedly, we have about 3 minutes left, so let's take this question. How large language models, LLMs, can impact telecom 6G in the future?
Well, it's not talking about the future. It's happening already now. Some operators have already integrated ARMs in their systems. So, for example, the chatbots that you are using, and also to translate some of the technical aspects for engineers, they are using ARMs. So in future, it will be just part of everyday work. They will be part of the systems, all systems that we are going to run, our mobile systems, applications, 5G, 6G, transport. I would say that they will be everywhere.
Makes sense. All right, I'm going to wrap us up here, but there's so much more that I feel like we could dig into in the future. As we were talking about, I would love to collaborate more in the future, especially when we have more than 40 minutes to go through this, but I'm very happy that you were able to join us and at least kick things off, looking at some of the challenges that you run, the work that you do, events that are coming up, this AI for Good Global Summit. I was just getting started joining this neural network, which is a community that ITU has that I haven't even, didn't really get to even ask about, but all kinds of cool stuff. So everyone, be sure to go follow Thomas on LinkedIn or wherever else you are on social networks. Learn more about ITU, the 17 UN SDGs. ITU has GitHub. It appears maybe multiple GitHubs, because there's this one is specifically, I think, for the 5G challenge, but I'll look those up. We'll put those in the description. And yeah, thank you again for joining us. What a pleasure.
Thanks for the invitation. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining the session as well.
Cheers, everyone.